Hello, my dear folks. Hello, my dear subscribers. Отец Vladimir is here. Well, I felt compelled and necessary to express my thoughts about situation between Russia and Ukraine and the current tensions. And I've been told by many of my friends that Putin will invade, and so is most of the news outlets stating that Russia is preparing to invade the Ukraine. I was busy with my life recent days and months, and never get a chance to fully submerged into this conflict, and decided to see what is the bottom of it. And turns out, well, according to my understanding, the whole reason why all of this has happened, it is a territorial reason, right? It's not the fact that Putin is a dictator and he's trying to do a good show off of his political muscles, but rather expand his current stand, and increase his military capabilities. And I think that's the reason why everything started. Think about Crimea. Right? What happened in Crimea? Well, Russia had pretty extensive military personnel. The fleet, Russian fleet, military fleet was there, and for a while they were leasing the place or docking their military ships, and that was allowed by a previous Ukrainian president. But once the lease expired, they felt that they were about to be evicted, and they moved in, and they decided to take the part of Ukraine that's been considered to be Ukraine for the last few years, since 1955, right? So and it is hard to determine whom Crimea should really belong to, because the history of Crimea is very convoluted. But if you look into history, that you can see that it was a part of Russian Empire, and after Revolution 1917, Russian Empire eventually in 1920s, I think, was divided in different republics, and initially Crimea was considered to be a part of Russia. But then eventually they probably looked into it, and territorially it looks like being a part of Ukraine. And that's why in 1955, correct me if I'm wrong, you can do a fact check, I'm just giving you a ballpark figure of what is happening, the whole history of it. And then 1955, they're like, listen, Crimea is no longer part of Russia, it's going to be part of Ukraine, which, you looking at the map, it kind of looks like it, yeah, that there is no direct connection to Russia. Crimea is really adjacent to Ukraine, and that it's been like that, and it didn't really matter because it was a one country, Soviet Union, right? But once there was a dissolution of Soviet Union in 1991, then all this tension started building up, and eventually in 2014 Russia took Crimea, and they've been happy about that, and so is what appears to be Crimea, population of Crimea. They were happy being part of Russia, which is still debatable. I'm not there, it's hard for me to get the whole picture. No one does polls of it, or reputable polls, to determine what are the wishes of population of Crimea, whom they want to be. Even there was some election voting apparently to be done, but we can't definitively state that it was done in a democratic way, considering the results of the recent elections of Putin, and he's scoring in 80 percentile in election, which is, that's very dubitable from my standpoint. So what is going on now is that, there is an area of Donbass and Nova Russia, and that's appears to be part of the conflict now. And they noticed satellite surveillance that we're getting a movement of military forces of Russia, and what appears to be they're getting ready for invasion. And it could be the case, but if you're looking at the press conferences that were led with participation of Vladimir Putin himself, that you can see that he clearly states he's not happy about NATO expansion in an eastward direction. Okay, and for those who are not aware, what's eastward expansion of NATO is generally a lot of countries that were post-Soviet Union republics, then eventually became independent, and they needed some military defense, and a lot of them start joining NATO, which is, when you're thinking about it, that NATO is the union alliance that that there's no restriction. Any country can join it if they meet certain criteria. And but the problem with that, that supposedly Putin stated that that Gorbachev was promised that there will be no eastward expansion of NATO. Meaning, again, so the countries that are east of the old German border will not be included in NATO. And when we're looking at it, that Ukraine is the most adjacent country that is adjacent to the Russia, and as a result, you will have NATO bordering Russia, and obviously they're not happy about that, and they feel pressured, and that's why they're doing a show off of their muscle, and that's the reason why they having all these movements. Will there be a military invasion of Ukraine? I believe there will be none unless there will be NATO eastward expansion, and that was clearly stated by Vladimir Putin. He clearly expressed his point that he's not happy with eastward expansion of NATO, and that's the whole reason why all of this is happening. Will he invade Ukraine? Does he have capability to invade Ukraine? Definitely. We can see that they were able to successfully take over Crimea. But why Putin so worried about eastward expansion of NATO? And it's pretty obvious. You don't have to be a political consultant to say why they so worried. Okay, so what? Oh, Ukraine part of NATO. Well, no, because Ukraine still considers Crimea a Ukrainian territory that's being occupied by Russians. So that's the standpoint of Ukraine. And since they don't have a power to take the Crimea back, that they just stay where they are. But once they will become a part of NATO, then NATO supposed to defend their members from from any intrusions or anyone who is going against members of NATO. All right, and that's the gist of what's happening. I mean, obviously it's just very superficial um, view of what is happening. I'm sure there are some other implications of this, but from the way I see, yeah, it makes sense. The only reason why Putin is moving his military forces um, around the Ukrainian borders, because he's trying to show that they have power and they have ability to, you know, make it um, forceful intrusion of the country in that regard. So I would say that that's why it's all this happening. So if we want, like, if I was in the shoes of um, those who will make decisions in terms of including Ukraine into the NATO, I would not. And that so was the supposed current standpoint of President Biden, during which he said, no, Ukraine is not near to be included in NATO at this point. And it seemed to be, satisfying point for Putin. But nonetheless, Putin worried. He is worried, and that's why he's moving his military personnel towards the Ukrainian borders. And again, will there be invasion? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but we have Russian proverb: "Говно не трогай, оно не воняет," which means if you don't touch the feces, they won't smell, right? Because a little crust that covers the feces and prevents it to dissipating the scent. Okay, so if I was in this situation, I would just wait off once that Putin, leave his position of being a leader of Ukraine, and after that we can see what's going on, what's going to be happening. But I think if there will be inclusion of Ukraine into the NATO, it will result in unnecessary losses of lives of Ukrainian and Russian people, for nothing other than satisfying egos of leaders of Eastern Europe. So that's my point. Again, we'll see what the history will show, but again, my prediction, unless there will be significant movement in terms of including former Soviet Union republics into the NATO Union. Those would be what? Those would be Georgia, Ukraine. There's not a country I can't recall right now, but those are the points of interest. So unless there will be eastward expansion of NATO, there will be no military invasion of Ukraine from the part of Russia. Well, we'll see. I might be wrong, but the way I see, despite of being what's considered to be a dictator, Vladimir Putin appears to be, a man who's trying to at least appear as a person who keeps his words. So, well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, stay tuned, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.